We're glad to have in our good friend Chris Landry, LandryFootball.com, Landry Football and X. Chris, welcome in, sir. It is August 5th. It is almost here.
It is. It's getting closer and closer. I don't know where the time's gone, but it's here. You're right.
It is. So, Chris, I have to ask. I know the answer is going to be no, but just for fun, do you get all giddy for the coaches poll? And why do we call this the coaches poll still? Are we really to believe that the coaches are voting on this?
No, I don't. I always remember Spurrier would say that because he's the one that would admit to anything, I guess. He just said he voted Duke in the top 25 every year, regardless how bad they were, how good they were. He just, I wouldn't take it seriously. And no, I'm not anticipating it. At the top, you'll see the usual suspects, and then there'll be some surprises. The only thing I'm concerned about is, are you going to use that as some sort of a guide if you're voting? And I don't like that. I think we really need to 3 or 4 games at least to get a feel for who are the best teams.
No, I agree with you 100%. Now, when you say who are you voting, are you referring to the College Football Playoff Committee?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they don't. I think it's just natural to begin to think that certain. They look at it as a certain, starting point. I think the reason why we have the committee starting to October because it gives you enough weeks. But I do think there's some inherent biases on how a team is ranked preseason. I do. I think it's only human. So that's the only thing that would concern me about it.
I wasn't even going to go down this way, but you bring up some interesting questions, and I've got some NFL stuff I want to get with you on as well. So you go into the year, for instance, and we're just going to use today's coaches poll as the most recent example. So Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Oregon 3, Texas 4. I don't think the committee would have problems with those teams simply because they're in your face so much. Alabama, even at 5, if they win, Ole Miss at 6. But if you get down, for instance, let's just say a team like Oklahoma at 16, and I'm just picking one out of the back end of half. Where do you rank Oklahoma? Are they really watching all these games? Like, for instance, we know someone like yourself does. We know other people that are in the business that are, knee deep in the weeds, so to speak. On Cole Kublik, he watches games. You have to feel like he does. He puts the stuff out there. Are these people on this committee really watching these teams?
Yeah, that concerns me. So you make a great point. All right, so and let's remind everybody, not that they need reminding, but for this conversation, we're picking 12. And so when you start to look at, well, they got, this many wins over top 20. Okay, you're basing that on what? Because you start looking at a team right now and trying to figure out, it is not that difficult to say, hey, Georgia's really good. Now, whether you want to put them 1 or 3 or 4, it doesn't really matter, I guess, but you're exactly right. The difference between somebody ranked 16th or 40th, really, you don't really know. Well, if there's a perception that one team is better and they get ranked early, then they're ranked against a team that won a game, and then they say, well, yeah, they at the time they were ranked. Well, why would they rank that? I mean, it's based on 4 weeks or inherent biases that they were ranked, not overtly, but just, well, Oklahoma's pretty good. Started off in the top 20. They don't say that, but you think they might think that, and that's one of the things. So for me, I don't really do it. I don't have to rank them necessarily, but this is maybe how I think a team is, going into the season and might be pretty good. It may be completely wrong, and I don't know that it's easy for everybody to justify that. We were completely wrong on that team.
Chris Landry on your radio, Monday edition of the program. Make sure to find him at Landry Football, also LandryFootball.com. Yeah, because I wonder, there's money to be made on these shows, right? These shows that they start doing the college football playoff. Each Tuesday they do the drop of people watch it. You can sell it. You can monetize it. There's money to be made, advertising and such. Will we ever get to a point where a committee is not needed? We don't need a committee for the National Football League. We don't need a committee for Division II. NAIA, high school football, Chris, we don't need a committee, but we have to have one in college.
Yeah, I think we could be going to that because if you start to think about it, do we have do we have everything at some point where two major conferences and we have at-larges or we have spots available? Kind of like, let's use the NFL as an example. We don't need a committee there. We never have, of course. But we, all the time you hear these people, not that it matters, they rank who are the top teams in pro football. We don't really get all that upset over it, or you shouldn't, because if they make it, they get in. But it's possible that you could have a pretty good team that, not so much anymore since we've added so many, but still possibility that you've got a weaker team gets in automatically because they won a weak division, a 4-team division, versus maybe a team that doesn't win their division, but they're in a much stronger division. Well, think about that in terms of college football. I think we get to the point where, all right, the top, the 3 or 4 teams in the big conferences get in, and if we've just got 2, then it takes it out of it a little bit. But then, I wonder, are we ever going to get comfortable enough to say that, 4 teams from the SEC or the Big Ten should make it? I don't know that I ever want to think that. I think because there could be a really good team or a couple of them that are deserving that are outside that league, and I think we need to allow for that. So it's going to be more difficult because of the amount of teams. But since we're going to 12, if we go to 16, you can see that. Hey, you win, maybe you break it down in the conference and divisions. I think there's a formula, because we have them in pro sports, by which we can eliminate the committee. But you just hit it. People are going to sit there and, just clamor for every Tuesday when the committee comes out on the first poll. I can't believe they got this team 6 over 8, and it's like, oh, my goodness, are we really having that? Does that really warrant a discussion? Because it's really much to do about nothing until we get enough of these games under our belt.
Chris, let me ask you this before we go to break, and then I want to get some NFL as well. I was looking at some the top 10 college football coaches on winning percentage. Ryan Day is number 1 on active coaches at 87.5%, followed by Kirby Smart, John Summerall. This is regardless of, G5, P5. The top guy in the country, 87.5%, is basically been told win or go home or do something else. Chris, how did we get to this point? Does Michigan matter for them that much?
For Michigan and Ohio State, it always has mattered a whole lot. Let's remind folks how many games John Cooper won at Ohio State. Now, he could never beat Michigan, and it was a problem. And, he was on the hot seat for years. Now, he survived it for a while, but he was in that same boat that Ryan Day's in for like 5 years. And so I guess now let me say this. If they lose to Michigan, they still get into the playoffs. And if they advance far into the playoffs, they're going to have to get over the fact that they lost to Michigan. And they will, because you do have the playoffs to make up for it. Like if they get to the national championship game or win, or certainly if they win it, really losing to Michigan, and that's the one loss, they're not going to like it, losing to their rival, but they're going to get over it. I think we're in a different world. I think back in the day, as I mentioned with John Cooper, where, if you lost to Michigan, then that was it. You wasn't going to the Rose Bowl, and you certainly had no chance. You lost everything. Now I think there's another path for somebody to get into the playoffs, get hot, and they can make everybody forget that they lost to their rival. And I think that's what it is. But if he loses, and then he also loses like a big game in the playoffs where they're favorites and they're a high seed, that's just where we are now. And I think that because he hasn't won one, I think he's feeling a lot of heat. And I think it is ridiculous, but there's a lot of things that I think are ridiculous that are just reality in today's sports world.